Darius Harper sat at the head of a polished mahogany table in his luxurious conference room, surrounded by his top executives. As they droned on about quarterly reports and profit margins, he found his mind wandering. The disconnect between him and his employees had never felt more palpable. He glanced around the room, taking in the expensive suits and carefully crafted presentations. These people were supposed to be his team, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that they were worlds apart. The numbers they discussed represented more than just financial success. They represented the hard work of hundreds of employees he barely knew. As the meeting concluded, Darius retreated to his office, his thoughts drifting to his childhood. He remembered the sting of discrimination, the doors that seemed to close in his face simply because of the color of his skin. The memory of his parents' encouragement echoed in his mind, their words pushing him to prove the doubters wrong. He had fought tooth and nail to get where he was today. From scholarships to part-time jobs, from entry-level positions to risky entrepreneurial ventures, every step had been a battle. Now, as the CEO of a successful tech company, he had achieved what many thought impossible. But success had brought its own challenges. The higher he climbed, the further removed he felt from the realities of those working under him. How could he truly understand their struggles and experiences from his ivory tower? Hours passed as Darius wrestled with these thoughts. The sky outside his window darkened, the city lights flickering to life. Suddenly an idea struck him. It was unconventional, perhaps even risky, but it felt right. Darius made his decision. He would go undercover as a janitor in his own company. It was the only way to truly understand the day-to-day experiences of his employees, to witness firsthand the culture he had inadvertently created. As he began to plan his disguise, a mix of nervousness and determination settled in his stomach. This could change everything, but isn't that exactly what he wanted? To bridge the gap, to make a real difference? With renewed purpose, Darius started making arrangements. He would need to be careful, thorough in his planning. But for the first time in years, he felt a spark of excitement. He was about to see his company through new eyes, and he was ready for whatever truths he might uncover. Darius adjusted the scratchy fabric of his janitor's uniform, his heart racing as he entered the building through the service entrance. The weight of his fake ID badge felt heavy against his chest. He'd never imagined he'd be sneaking into his own company, yet here he was, clipboard in hand, ready to start his first night shift as a custodian. The bustling daytime activity had given way to a quieter, more subdued atmosphere. A few late workers hunched over their desks, the glow of computer screens illuminating tired faces. Darius kept his head down, focusing on his task of emptying trash bins and wiping down surfaces. As he moved through the open office space, snippets of conversation drifted to his ears. At first, it was mundane chatter about deadlines and weekend plans. But then, something caught his attention. "Can you believe they promoted Jamal?" A voice sneered from a nearby cubicle. "Guess we know why. Gotta fill those diversity quotas, right?" Another voice chimed in, laughing. "Yeah, and did you see the new girl in marketing? Bet she's only here because of her exotic look." Darius's hand tightened on his cleaning cart, knuckles turning white. He'd suspected such attitudes existed in his company, but hearing it so blatantly expressed made his stomach churn. These were his employees, talking about their colleagues as if they were tokens rather than qualified professionals. As he continued his rounds, more instances of casual discrimination surfaced. Microaggressions, dismissive comments about cultural fit, and blatant stereotyping permeated conversations. Each remark felt like a personal blow to Darius, a stark reminder of the battles he'd fought to reach his position. Amidst the disheartening revelations, Darius noticed a young woman working late at her desk. Her nameplate read Maria Rodriguez, administrative assistant. Unlike the others, she seemed focused solely on her work. Determination etched on her face as she tackled a stack of reports. Curiosity piqued, Darius approached her desk to empty the trash. As he did, Maria looked up and offered a warm smile. "Thanks for your hard work," she said, her voice sincere. "I don't think people appreciate how much you all do to keep this place running smoothly." Taken aback by her kindness, Darius managed a nod and a quiet thank you. As he moved on, he couldn't help but feel a connection to Maria. In a sea of indifference and prejudice, her simple acknowledgement stood out like a beacon of hope. The rest of his shift passed in a blur of cleaning tasks and overheard conversations. By the time morning arrived, Darius's mind was reeling from all he'd witnessed. The disparity between his vision for the company and the reality of its culture was stark and unsettling. As he left the building, blending in with the arriving day shift workers, Darius knew one thing for certain. Changes needed to be made, and he was more determined than ever to make them happen. The question was how? A week into his undercover operation, Darius found himself cleaning the executive floor late one evening. The plush carpets and expensive artwork stood in stark contrast to the utilitarian areas where most employees worked. As he approached the main conference room, voices drifted through the partially open door. "Did you see Johnson's proposal? It's like he doesn't even speak English," a male voice chuckled. Darius recognized it as belonging to Mark, one of the senior VPs. "Well, what do you expect from someone who probably got in through affirmative action?" Another executive replied, eliciting laughter from the group. Darius froze, his hand gripping the handle of his mop. These were the people he'd trusted to lead his company, making crude jokes about their own team members. He wanted to burst in and confront them, but he knew he couldn't blow his cover. Instead, he forced himself to keep cleaning, his ears burning as the offensive conversation continued. The next day, still reeling from what he'd overheard, Darius found himself working alongside Maria. She was staying late again, her desk cluttered with files and sticky notes. As he emptied her trash can, she looked up with a tired smile. "Rough day?" Darius asked, unable to contain his curiosity. Maria sighed, rubbing her temples. "You could say that. Sometimes it feels like no matter how hard I work, I'm invisible here." Encouraged by her openness, Darius pressed further. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then seemed to decide he was safe to confide in. "I've been here for 3 years, consistently outperforming my targets. But every time a promotion comes up, it goes to someone else. Someone who—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Fits a certain image." Darius felt a pang of guilt. How had he let this happen in his own company? "That must be frustrating," he said, wishing he could do more. Maria nodded, her eyes glistening slightly. "It's not just me. I see it happening to others too. It's like there's an invisible barrier for some of us." As she spoke, Darius made a decision. He couldn't stand by and watch this continue. He needed to document these injustices, to gather concrete evidence of the discrimination happening under his nose. Over the next few weeks, Darius became a silent observer and confidant. He listened to stories from custodial staff about being treated as invisible, heard sales team members mock accents of their international colleagues, and witnessed qualified candidates from minority backgrounds being passed over for promotions. Each night, after his shift, Darius would return home and meticulously record everything he'd seen and heard. He began to see patterns emerging, systemic issues that ran deep within the company culture. The weight of these revelations was heavy, but it fueled Darius's determination. He knew that exposing these problems wouldn't be easy, and that it might even put his own position at risk. But as he looked at the growing pile of evidence on his desk, he knew it was a risk he had to take. The company he'd built was supposed to be a beacon of innovation and opportunity. Instead, it had become a place where talented individuals like Maria were held back by prejudice and narrow-mindedness. Darius realized that his most important work was just beginning. It was time to tear down the invisible barriers and rebuild his company's culture from the ground up. As weeks passed, Darius's resolve strengthened. He knew he needed an ally, someone on the inside who could help him affect change. His mind kept returning to Maria, her integrity and work ethic standing out amidst the toxic environment he'd uncovered. One evening, as the office emptied, Darius approached Maria's desk. "Can we talk?" he asked, his heart pounding. "Somewhere private?" Curiosity flickered across Maria's face as she nodded, following him to an empty conference room. Once inside, Darius took a deep breath. "I'm not who you think I am," he began, removing his fake glasses and straightening his posture. Maria's eyes widened in recognition. You're Darius Harper, the CEO, she gasped, her voice a mix of confusion and awe. Darius nodded, explaining his undercover mission and the disturbing truths he'd uncovered. As he spoke, Maria's expression shifted from shock to understanding, then to determination. "I want to create a presentation," Darius said, "to expose the culture of discrimination and push for real change. But I need help from someone who's lived it. Will you work with me on this?" Without hesitation, Maria agreed. "It's about time someone did something," she said, her voice firm. Over the next few weeks, Darius and Maria worked tirelessly, gathering more evidence and testimonies. They met in secret, compiling data and crafting a compelling narrative that would be impossible to ignore. Their efforts didn't go unnoticed. As they collected more stories, other employees began to take notice of the janitor, who seemed unusually interested in office politics. Whispers started to circulate about potential layoffs or corporate spies. One afternoon, as Darius was cleaning near the HR department, he overheard two managers discussing the strange atmosphere in the office. "People are getting paranoid," one said. "We need to crack down on these rumors before they affect productivity." The mounting tension only fueled Darius and Maria's determination. They knew they were racing against time. If their plan was discovered before they were ready, everything could fall apart. As they put the finishing touches on their presentation, Darius received an anonymous note in his locker. "Watch your back. Some people don't like change." The threat was clear, but it only confirmed that they were on the right track. Maria, too, faced increased scrutiny. Her supervisor began questioning her late nights at the office and her frequent conversations with the new janitor. But she stood firm, deflecting suspicions with carefully crafted excuses. Despite the challenges, their presentation took shape. It was a powerful compilation of personal stories, statistical evidence, and concrete examples of discrimination. They included proposals for new policies, training programs, and a complete overhaul of the hiring and promotion processes. As the day of the company-wide meeting approached, Darius and Maria felt a mix of anticipation and fear. They knew that what they were about to do would shake the company to its core. There would be resistance, maybe even retaliation, but they also knew it was necessary. The night before the big reveal, Darius and Maria met one last time to review their plan. The weight of what they were about to do hung heavy in the air. "Are you ready for this?" Darius asked, searching Maria's face for any sign of doubt. Maria met his gaze steadily. "I've been ready for this my entire career," she replied. "Let's change things." As they parted ways, both knew that tomorrow would be a turning point, not just for them, but for every employee who had ever felt marginalized or overlooked. The time for hiding was over. Tomorrow, the truth would come to light. The day of the company-wide meeting arrived, bringing with it a palpable tension. Employees filed into the large auditorium, murmuring amongst themselves about the unusual nature of the gathering. Rumors had been circulating for weeks, and speculation was rife. Darius, still in his janitor's disguise, wheeled his cleaning cart to the back of the room, heart pounding. He caught Maria's eye from across the auditorium. She gave him a subtle nod. It was time. As the last of the employees took their seats, the company CEO stepped onto the stage. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice echoing through the room. "We have a special presentation today, but first, I'd like to introduce someone." This was Darius's cue. Taking a deep breath, he strode down the center aisle, shedding his janitor's uniform to reveal a crisp suit underneath. A collective gasp rippled through the audience as recognition dawned. "For the past month," Darius announced, his voice strong despite his nerves, "I've been working among you as a janitor. What I've witnessed has both saddened and angered me. Today, we're going to talk about it." The room erupted in shocked whispers. Darius could see the executives shifting uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging worried glances. He pressed on, launching into the presentation he and Maria had prepared. Slide after slide revealed the ugly truth. Statistical evidence of hiring biases, testimonials from marginalized employees, transcripts of discriminatory conversations. Darius didn't hold back, naming names and calling out specific instances of prejudice. As he spoke, he could see the impact on the faces of his employees. Some looked ashamed, others angry, and many appeared shocked that these issues had been happening right under their noses. Halfway through the presentation, Darius invited Maria to join him on stage. "This brave woman," he said, "has been instrumental in bringing these issues to light. She represents the talent and potential that we've been ignoring and suppressing." Maria stepped forward, her voice steady as she shared her own experiences of discrimination and the stories of others who had been too afraid to speak up. The auditorium was silent, hanging on her every word. As the presentation concluded, Darius addressed the room once more. "What we've shown you today is unacceptable," he declared. "It stops now. We will be implementing immediate changes to address these issues." He outlined a series of initiatives: mandatory diversity and inclusion training, a complete overhaul of hiring and promotion practices, and the establishment of an independent committee to investigate complaints of discrimination. Furthermore, Darius continued, his gaze sweeping across the executive row, those who have perpetuated this toxic culture will be held accountable. Resignations will be expected, and in some cases, required. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Some of the executives looked ready to protest, but the evidence presented was irrefutable. They knew their positions were no longer secure. As Darius wrapped up, he could see a mix of emotions on the faces before him. There was anger, certainly, but also hope. Employees who had long felt voiceless were sitting up straighter, a new light in their eyes. "This is just the beginning," Darius concluded. "We have a long way to go, but together we can build a company that truly values every individual. A company we can all be proud of." As applause erupted, tentative at first but growing stronger, Darius knew that the hardest part was yet to come. But looking at Maria, standing tall beside him, he felt ready for the challenge. They had taken the first step towards real change, and there was no going back. In the wake of Darius's shocking revelation and presentation, the company was in turmoil. The auditorium had barely emptied before emergency meetings were called, and phones began ringing off the hook. Darius, however, was focused on implementing the changes he had promised. He wasted no time in addressing the leadership structure. In a series of tense, closed-door meetings, Darius confronted the executives who had been complicit in perpetuating the toxic culture. Some tried to defend themselves, others attempted to shift blame, but faced with the evidence Darius had gathered, they had little room to maneuver. "I'm not here to debate," Darius stated firmly during one particularly heated exchange. "You have a choice: resign voluntarily or face termination and potential legal consequences." By the end of the day, several high-level positions had been vacated. The message was clear: the old guard was out, and a new era was beginning. As news of the executive shakeup spread, Darius called another company-wide meeting. This time, the atmosphere was charged with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Employees whispered among themselves, wondering what other changes were in store. Darius took the stage, his presence commanding attention. "Today we start rebuilding," he announced. "We're not just changing policies, we're changing our entire approach to leadership." He outlined his plan for a more diverse and inclusive executive team, emphasizing that promotions would be based on merit, innovative thinking, and a commitment to fostering an equitable work environment. Then, with a smile, he turned to where Maria was seated. "Maria Rodriguez," he called out, "please join me on stage." Surprised murmurs rippled through the crowd as Maria made her way forward. Darius continued, "Maria's insights and courage were instrumental in bringing these issues to light. Her dedication to this company and her colleagues is exactly what we need in leadership." Turning to Maria, he said, "I'd like to offer you the position of Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer with a seat on the executive board. Your first task will be to oversee the implementation of our new initiatives." The auditorium erupted in applause as Maria, fighting back tears, accepted the position. It was a powerful symbol of the changes to come, and a clear message that competence and integrity would be rewarded. As the meeting concluded, Darius could see a shift in the energy of the room. Where there had been fear and uncertainty, he now sensed hope and cautious optimism. Employees lingered, talking excitedly about the possibilities that lay ahead. Later, in a quiet moment, Darius and Maria shared a conversation away from the crowds. "Thank you for trusting me," Maria said, her voice thick with emotion. "I won't let you down." Darius smiled, feeling for the first time in weeks that he was truly doing right by his company. "No, Maria. Thank you for your bravery. We couldn't have done this without you." As they parted ways, both knew that the real work was just beginning. There would be resistance to overcome, old habits to break, and a company culture to rebuild from the ground up. But with a renewed sense of purpose and a commitment to genuine change, they were ready to face the challenges ahead. The day's events had sent a clear message throughout the company and beyond. Change was not just coming, it was here. And it was starting at the top. In the weeks following the dramatic restructuring, Darius and Maria worked tirelessly to implement the promised changes. The company was buzzing with activity, a mix of excitement and apprehension permeating every department. Darius convened daily meetings with the new leadership team, including Maria in her role as Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. These sessions were intense, filled with heated debates and challenging conversations as they hammered out the details of new policies. "We need to be thorough," Darius emphasized during one particularly long meeting. "Every decision we make now will set the tone for years to come." The team tackled issues head-on, revamping hiring practices to eliminate bias, creating mentorship programs for underrepresented groups, and establishing clear pathways for career advancement based on merit rather than connections. Maria proved to be an invaluable asset, her firsthand experience informing many of the new initiatives. She pushed for transparency in promotion decisions and advocated for a comprehensive review of salary structures to address pay disparities. As the new policies took shape, Darius made it a point to personally visit every department in the company. He wanted to hear directly from employees at all levels to understand their concerns and gather input on the changes being implemented. These visits were eye-opening. In the customer service department, he learned of subtle discrimination in client assignments. In engineering, he discovered that women and minorities were often sidelined on high-profile projects. "Your insights are crucial," Darius told a group of junior developers who had shared their experiences. "We can't fix what we don't understand." Meanwhile, Maria spearheaded the development of diversity and inclusion training programs. These weren't the typical one-off seminars that employees could tune out. Instead, she designed ongoing workshops that encouraged active participation and real-world application of inclusive practices. "This isn't about checking boxes," Maria explained to a room full of managers. "It's about fundamentally changing how we work together." The training sessions were met with mixed reactions. Some employees embraced the opportunity for growth, while others grumbled about political correctness gone too far. Darius and Maria knew they couldn't win everyone over overnight, but they remained committed to the process. As the first month of changes drew to a close, Darius called another company-wide meeting to provide updates and gather feedback. The atmosphere was noticeably different from previous gatherings. There was an energy in the room, a sense of engagement that hadn't been there before. Darius shared early results: a more diverse pool of job applicants, increased participation in employee resource groups, and positive feedback from clients on the company's new direction. He also acknowledged the challenges they still faced, emphasizing that change was an ongoing process. "We're not perfect," he concluded, "but we're making progress. And we're committed to continuing this journey together." As employees filed out of the auditorium, Darius overheard snippets of conversation. There was still skepticism from some quarters, but he also caught words like hopeful, finally, and about time. Later, reviewing the day with Maria, Darius allowed himself a moment of cautious optimism. "We got a long way to go," he said, "but I think we're on the right track." Maria nodded, a determined glint in her eye. "We are," she agreed. "And we're just getting started." As the internal changes within the company began to take root, Darius realized that true transformation extended beyond the office walls. He saw an opportunity to make a broader impact on the community that had long been overlooked by the tech industry. In a meeting with Maria and the new leadership team, Darius proposed a bold initiative. "We've been focused on changing our company," he said, leaning forward intently. "Now it's time to change our community." The plan was ambitious: create a comprehensive program to provide technology education and job training for underserved youth in the local area. It would involve partnering with schools, community centers, and local organizations to identify talented young people who lacked access to opportunities in the tech sector. "We're not just creating a pipeline for our company," Darius explained. "We're investing in the future of our entire industry." Maria took charge of coordinating the program, leveraging her new position to ensure it aligned with the company's broader diversity and inclusion goals. She worked tirelessly, reaching out to community leaders, educators, and nonprofit organizations to build a network of support. The program took shape quickly. It included coding boot camps, mentorship opportunities, internships, and scholarships for higher education in STEM fields. The company's employees were encouraged to volunteer as instructors and mentors, creating a bridge between the corporate world and the community. As word of the initiative spread, Darius found himself invited to speak at local schools and community events. At one such gathering in a community center, he shared his own story of overcoming obstacles to succeed in the tech world. "I stand here today, not just as a CEO, but as someone who knows what it's like to be told you don't belong," he told the crowd of eager young faces. "I'm here to tell you that you do belong, and we're going to make sure you have the tools to prove it." The response was overwhelming. Applications for the program flooded in, far exceeding their initial expectations. Maria and her team worked overtime to accommodate as many participants as possible, determined not to turn away any promising candidates. As the first cohort of students began their training, the energy within the company shifted once again. Employees who volunteered as mentors reported feeling reinvigorated, their own passion for technology rekindled by the enthusiasm of their young protégés. One Saturday, Darius visited a coding workshop being held at the company's headquarters. The room was buzzing with activity, filled with students hunched over computers, their faces a mix of concentration and excitement. As he walked around, he overheard a young girl exclaim, "I never knew I could do this." That moment crystallized for Darius the importance of what they were doing. It wasn't just about changing his company or even the industry. It was about changing lives, opening doors that had long been closed. In a quiet corner, he found Maria observing the scene with a smile. "This is it, isn't it?" he said. "This is how we make lasting change." Maria nodded, her eyes shining. "One student at a time," she agreed. "We're not just teaching them to code. We're teaching them to believe in themselves." As they watched the students work, Darius felt a profound sense of purpose. The road ahead was still long, but for the first time, he could see clearly where it led, to a future where talent and passion, not background or privilege, determined success. The company was no longer just a business. It was becoming a force for change, a beacon of hope in a community that had long been overlooked. And Darius knew that this, more than any profit margin or stock price, would be his true legacy. As the company's new initiatives gained momentum, not everyone was pleased with the direction of change. Mark, one of the few remaining executives from the old guard, found himself increasingly marginalized in decision-making processes. His discomfort with the new inclusive policies was palpable, and his resistance to change began to manifest in subtle acts of sabotage. During a leadership meeting, Mark questioned the financial viability of the community outreach programs. "We're a tech company, not a charity," he argued, his voice laced with disdain. "These programs are draining our resources without any clear return on investment." Darius and Maria exchanged a knowing glance. They had anticipated pushback, but Mark's open hostility was unexpected. "The return on investment goes beyond immediate financial gains," Darius countered calmly. "We're building a stronger, more diverse talent pool for the future." As the weeks passed, Mark's opposition grew more overt. He began to delay approvals for diversity initiatives, citing budget concerns or procedural issues. In private conversations with other managers, he sowed seeds of doubt about the new direction of the company. Maria, attuned to the undercurrents of office politics, noticed the growing tension. She brought her concerns to Darius. "Mark is undermining our efforts," she reported. "He's creating a culture of resistance among some of the old-timers." Darius nodded gravely. He had hoped that everyone would see the value in the changes, but he realized now that some people were too entrenched in their old ways of thinking. "Keep documenting everything," he advised Maria. "We'll need to address this head-on." The situation came to a head when Mark deliberately excluded several promising minority candidates from a high-profile project, citing lack of experience. When confronted, he defended his decision with thinly veiled racist remarks. Darius called an emergency meeting with the board of directors. "We have a problem," he began, laying out the evidence of Mark's behavior. "His actions are not only hindering our progress, but are in direct violation of our new policies." The board members listened intently, their expressions growing more serious as Darius and Maria presented their case. The documentation was damning. Emails, witness statements, and statistical evidence all pointed to Mark's systematic efforts to undermine the diversity initiatives. As the meeting concluded, the board's decision was unanimous. Mark had to go. "We can't allow anyone, no matter their position, to stand in the way of the company's commitment to equality and inclusion," the board chair stated firmly. The next day, Darius called Mark into his office. The conversation was tense, but direct. "Your actions have made it clear that you're not aligned with the company's values," Darius said. "We're terminating your employment, effective immediately." Mark's face contorted with anger. "You'll regret this," he spat. "You're running this company into the ground with your social justice nonsense." As security escorted Mark from the building, Darius felt a mix of sadness and relief. He had hoped to bring everyone along on this journey of change, but he realized that sometimes moving forward meant leaving some people behind. News of Mark's departure spread quickly through the company. While some of his allies grumbled, the majority of employees saw it as a clear sign of the leadership's commitment to their new direction. Later that day, Darius addressed the company. "Change isn't easy," he acknowledged, "but we must stand firm in our values. Anyone who can't embrace our commitment to equality and inclusion doesn't have a place in our future." As he looked out at the sea of faces, diverse, attentive, and largely supportive, Darius knew they had passed a crucial test. They had shown that their commitment to change wasn't just words, but action. The road ahead would still have challenges, but they were ready to face them, stronger and more united than ever. In the wake of Mark's dismissal, Darius knew that transparency was crucial. He called for an all-hands meeting to address the recent events and reaffirm the company's commitment to its new direction. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation as employees filed in. Darius took the stage, his demeanor serious but determined. "I know there have been rumors," he began, "and I want to address them directly." He laid out the situation with Mark, not shying away from the difficult details. "We discovered systematic efforts to undermine our diversity and inclusion initiatives," Darius explained. "This behavior was not only against our policies, but against everything we stand for as a company." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Darius continued, "I want to be clear, our commitment to building an inclusive, equitable workplace is not negotiable. Anyone who cannot align with these values does not have a place here, regardless of their position or past contributions." As he spoke, Darius could see a mix of reactions in the audience. Some nodded in agreement, while others looked uncomfortable. He pressed on, addressing the concerns he knew some might have. "Change is hard," he acknowledged. "It's natural to feel uncertain. But I ask you to look at what we've accomplished in just a few months. Our community programs are thriving. We're seeing increased innovation and collaboration across departments. Our client satisfaction ratings are at an all-time high." He paused, letting his words sink in. This isn't just about doing the right thing morally. It's about building a stronger, more competitive company. Maria then took the stage, presenting data that showed the positive impact of their initiatives. Productivity was up. Employee satisfaction had improved. The diversity of their applicant pool had increased dramatically. "This is just the beginning," Maria said, her voice filled with passion. "Imagine what we can achieve as we continue on this path." As the meeting concluded, Darius opened the floor for questions. The discussion that followed was honest and at times heated, but it was clear that the majority of employees were on board with the new direction. In the days that followed, Darius and Maria worked tirelessly to address any lingering concerns. They held small group sessions, encouraging open dialogue and gathering feedback. They also launched a company-wide survey to gauge employee sentiment and identify areas for improvement. The results were encouraging. While there were still pockets of resistance, the overall mood was positive. Employees reported feeling more valued and empowered. Many shared stories of how the new inclusive culture had allowed them to bring their full selves to work for the first time. One afternoon, as Darius and Maria were reviewing the survey results, they received unexpected news. A major industry publication wanted to feature their company in a cover story about corporate culture transformation. "They want to highlight us as a model for the tech industry," Maria said, her eyes wide with excitement. Darius smiled, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment. "We've come a long way," he mused, "but we can't rest on our laurels. This is just the beginning." As they prepared for the interview, Darius reflected on the journey they'd taken. From his days undercover as a janitor to the dramatic changes they'd implemented, it had been a challenging but rewarding path. The article, when published, sent shockwaves through the industry. Other companies began reaching out, eager to learn from their experience. Darius and Maria found themselves in demand as speakers at industry conferences, sharing their story and inspiring others to take similar steps. But even as they celebrated their success, both Darius and Maria knew that their work was far from over. True change was an ongoing process, requiring constant vigilance and commitment. As they looked to the future, they saw not just a transformed company, but the potential for a transformed industry. They had shown what was possible when a company truly committed to equality and inclusion. Now, it was time to help others do the same. The story of their company's transformation had become more than just a corporate turnaround. It had become a beacon of hope, a challenge to the status quo, and a roadmap for others to follow. And for Darius and Maria, it was the beginning of a new chapter in their mission to create a more equitable and inclusive world, one company at a time.